This part of the program contains practical techniques and strategies for freeing yourself from under-earning. The first is the spending plan. Now, we spoke about the spending record earlier. Now we're going to talk about the spending plan. The spending plan is a powerful tool. It helps you match your income to your expenses. It allows you to exercise options and make informed choices. Now, everybody has to spend. It's something we all have to do every day, but most of us are completely unconscious about our spending. The spending plan is not a budget. It is a set of guidelines to point you in the direction you wish to go. There's a world of psychological difference between the two. A general doesn't budget for a battle. He plans for a battle. A lover doesn't budget a romantic night. She plans for a romantic night. Ask yourself, how do you plan to spend your money this weekend? Now ask, how are you going to budget your money this weekend? They're not the same. Budgets are stern. They're authoritarian. Plans are flexible. Budgets lead to penny pinching and deprivation. Plans encourage action and increase. The easiest way to create a spending plan is to expand on the form you're already using for your spending record. Get a blank copy of your record to use as a model. On a separate piece of paper, draw up a new form, altering the old one in this fashion. Change the name on the last vertical column to the right from total to actual. Add a new vertical column to the right of that one and give it the heading Plan. Add a final vertical column to the right of the Plan column and mark this one plus or minus. The purpose of the spending plan is to help you plan your expenses for the coming month. Let's say you're working with a net income of $3,000. Get out last month's spending record, which lists the totals you actually did spend last month in each of your categories. These amounts are your starting point. Think about these figures one category at a time. Does it seem like you spent too much in this category, or maybe not enough? Pick what you think is a reasonable figure given your income and other expenses, and enter it in the Plan column. Go through each of your categories in this fashion. Let's say you've done that and that your projected expenses total $200 more than your income. Something has to change. You'll have to sell something, put in overtime, or find some other way to get your income up to $3,200 for the month, or you could cut expenses by $200. You'll have to do one or the other. Otherwise, if you lived up to the letter of your plan, you would debt. You can't make $3,000 and spend $3,200 without debting. And incurring new unsecured debt, of course, is lethal to under-earners. You could make up the shortfall by using money from your contingency fund or your savings. That would not be debt. Still, done with any regularity, it would be under-earning, repeatedly gaining less income than you need, and unchecked, it will inevitably lead to debt. At the end of the month, use the last three columns in your combination plan and record to measure how well you did and to help you formulate your new plan for the coming month. To do this, add up the weekly totals in each category to arrive at a monthly total. Enter that figure in the actual column. Now, compare that figure to what you had in the plan column and enter in the appropriate amount in plus or minus. Now, if you spent more in a particular category or less in that category, then you can use that as a guideline to help you make the appropriate adjustments for next month's plan. The spending plan provides you with absolute clarity about what is going on with your money and a means through which to begin taking control of it. It is nearly always essential in freeing yourself from under-earning. Don't put off making a spending plan. Do it as soon as you have completed one full month of the spending record, which you will then use as a guide. Work with the spending plan every month for 6 months. Then decide if you wish to continue with it. Most people do, as I myself have for the last many years. Next is a strategy that, although it seems obvious, many people overlook, or it just never occurs to them. And that is simply this: ask for more. Request a raise. Raise your rates. Sometimes freeing yourself from under-earning is not a matter of changing jobs or doing different work or taking similar actions, although those might be helpful, but simply of being paid more for what you already do and for the same number of hours that you are already doing it. My friend Lawrence Block, who writes mystery novels, says, "It takes the same amount of time and energy to write a book for $5,000 as it does to write one for $50,000. Under-earners nearly always undervalue and underprice themselves. Susan, an executive assistant, didn't just ask for a raise, she campaigned for it. First, she surveyed salaries in her field, finding out that hers was about average. Then she wrote a 2-page memo. On the first page, she cited her previous excellent service, listed her strengths, and offered a procedural suggestion she thought would improve inter-office communication. That was to demonstrate her commitment to the company, her interest in it, and her value to it. On the second page, she summarized in a short paragraph her expenses and obligations, listed her take-home pay, and pointed out that there was only a marginal difference between income and outgo. Then she wrote a cover letter requesting a raise, stating a specific figure, which she knew brought her close to the top in her field but didn't exceed it, and drawing attention to her supporting memo. Susan got the raise. Susan's employer, of course, could have offered her less than she'd asked for or even said no entirely. In that case, Susan would have had to think about what other options were available to her. Clearly, there are situations, and many of them, in which people aren't going to get a raise no matter how many times they ask. The military, civil service, corporations with clearly defined pay levels, union shops, maybe even the deli around the corner, or an employer who simply can't or won't pay more for whatever reason. Some years ago, I was talking with a New York Times editor about a feature on debt I was doing for his paper's magazine section. I mentioned asking for a raise as one of the ways to bring in more money. "If I did that here," he said, with some cynicism and dolefully, "they'd just laugh at me." And he was right. Well, they probably wouldn't have laughed at him, but nor would they have given him a raise either. So what do you do in a situation like this? Generally, even organizations with the most rigidly structured pay scales allow for promotions, a move into management, or some other kind of shift that will bring an increase in pay. That is one option, and you will be practicing the other parts of this program, which will provide you with more. But in the end, if staying where you are or continuing to work in the field you have been is a function of your under-earning, then sooner or later, you're going to have to think about moving to another job or into another field. Diversification is a time-honored financial principle. To diversify means to spread over several areas, to introduce variety. Corporations do it by entering multiple arenas of activity or making different kinds of products. Investors do it by buying several stocks instead of just one. The primary advantage of diversifying is that it minimizes the risk of loss. Basically, it's a practical application of the old saw, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Diversifying in your life, in your earning life, can provide you with the same advantage. It can minimize the damage you might otherwise sustain in a setback such as being laid off or losing a client. It can also generate new opportunities for you and maximize your ability to take advantage of them. Diversifying was part of my own liberation from under-earning. Earlier, we said that one definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over and expect different results. Another is to keep doing over and over again something that used to work after the context has changed and expect it still to work. That's what I had been doing. My first step in ending this was to admit to myself that what I had been doing, writing novels, and in a particular way, that is, selling them before I wrote them in proposal form, was no longer working, wasn't bringing in enough to meet my needs. Once it had, but now it wasn't. What follows is, in distilled form, the rest of the process I went through. Most of these activities were in conjunction with or overlapped one another. First, I asked, where does the problem lie? Me, my agent, or the changes that have taken place in publishing? The answer, I decided, was in all three. The solution: change agents, alter my own activities. There was nothing I could do about publishing, which is a monolith. So, I changed agents. It was in changing my activities that I diversified. I began to write for magazines again, which I hadn't done in nearly a dozen years. The money wasn't such that it offered a long-term solution, but the cash was very helpful in the short run. In books, I turned to nonfiction, drawing upon my work, my research and experience in psychology, personal transformation, and debt recovery over the past several years. I searched myself for other marketable skills I might have. My resume said, Mr. Mundis has been a novelist for 20 years. I looked in the paper, and there wasn't much corporate call for novelists. Editing, I decided. That was a skill I possessed. So I became willing to go into an office for a while. Here, I discovered that I had an ego investment in never having worked for anyone else, and I had to overcome that. But though I was now willing, who would hire me? I had never worked as an editor in my life. In fact, except for a few months right out of college, I had never worked for anyone in any capacity. But I went ahead anyway, made phone calls, sent letters, and ended up as a feature editor at the New York Times, where I stayed for a year and a half. I also knew more about overcoming writer's block than anyone I had ever met or whose work I had ever read. Because of my own difficulties with block, I had had to develop and employ a variety of means over the years to render it harmless. So I put together a consultation session that would break writer's block for anyone, forever, in a single afternoon, and establish for them a productive, reliable working schedule. We've talked about this before and my reluctance to advertise and to sell this over the phone. The first year I did advertise, the first year I did actually work at this, that consulting brought in 15% of my gross income. Next, prompted by the call from that corporation from Washington, D.C., which I mentioned in an earlier session, I adapted the block-breaking material into a day-long seminar designed to reinvigorate corporate staff writers who were burned out, and took that seminar into other corporations and into professional associations. Then, staying with nonfiction, I wrote a book which presented step-by-step the program I had used in breaking writer's block. Shortly after that, one of my block-breaking clients, a writer and television producer, became involved with a project for cable television and asked me to join him as a writer. I did, for 6 months. I also developed a series of workshops on debt recovery and other aspects of handling money in a positive way, which I presented for corporations, private institutions, and community groups in various parts of the country. That is partly my story of diversification. So diversification, then, is a process in which you identify the skills and abilities you possess in addition to those you use in your main occupation, or further ways to apply those you already do use, and then find avenues through which to turn them into income-producing activities. These skills may be related to what you normally do, as mine were, or to activities you don't usually think of as sources of income, such as those associated with a sport or a hobby. Craig, for example, a high school teacher in Minnesota, an avid fisherman and outdoorsman, diversified by guiding parties of vacationers on fishing trips, later by creating a small business out of repairing and reconditioning fishing tackle and boats, and still later by making custom bamboo fly rods to order. Expanding into new areas of earning will also open up unforeseen opportunities. That I began to break writer's block as a consultant, for example, eventually led me to writing for television, which I'd never done before, and that eventually led to writing a new nonfiction book and to leading corporate workshops for staff writers, all of which paid very well. Diversification is not only for people who work for themselves. It's just as useful for those with full-time jobs or who, like Craig, have large blocks of free time. If you're in this position, you can undertake diversification part-time, as something you do 1 or 2 evenings a week or on the weekend. I'm not suggesting that you simply work more hours each week. The key is to be sure that your diversifying activities are high-paying. These activities can be temporary. Their primary purpose to bring in more money while you're still at your old job, your old under-earning job, while you're looking for a new one. Or they might be activities you put in place in order to have something to fall back on in case of a layoff, or that will help you make a transition out of one occupation into another. Melanie, a retail sales clerk for a large office supply outlet near Boca Raton, developed a part-time business setting up and configuring office equipment for small business owners and audio and TV equipment and home computer systems for retired people who were intimidated by the equipment or just didn't want to be bothered. Within 2 years, she became so successful at what had been a hesitant step toward diversification that she now works as a sales clerk at the outlet only 2 days a week and for herself the other 3. Her income is nearly 30% greater than it was. Diversifying can be a useful technique. Another very useful technique is what I call stick with the winners. Stick with the winners may sound elitist or brutally Darwinian, but it isn't. It's the only principle that makes sense. To do otherwise would be simply to strengthen the power of the malady over you. So, who are the winners? People with pots of money? People who've never under-earned a day in their life? People with high incomes? No, not for our purposes. Someone who's never had a problem with under-earning can't help you in any truly meaningful way, even if she's a whiz with money herself. And someone who's still under-earning herself has experience only with the problem, not with the solution. A winner is someone who's come from the same place you're in now, who is recovering from under-earning, who has something in his or her life that you'd like in your own. Joy, peace, tranquility, enthusiasm, delight, a capacity to get up in the morning with pleasure, the ability of easy laughter. None of these people set out to free himself or herself from under-earning because of an excess of joy. Each started from a bottom, from a place of pain and despair. I already know how to under-earn. I don't need any help with that. I already know how to feel despair, fear, and hopelessness, how to experience frustration, anger, self-pity. What I need is to listen to people who know these things too, but who have been able to emerge from that darkness. I need to find out how they did it, what they did. When you want to find a job, says Eric, a hospital planner, you don't ask someone who's been on welfare 20 years how to do it. So, where can you find the winners? Currently, nearly anyone who's freeing himself from under-earning and who is committed to that freedom, willing to go to any lengths to achieve it, is a winner. In places where there are few or perhaps even no such persons, you can draw support from people you admire and respect and who have something in their lives you'd like to have in yours. Or you can form a support group of your own. Finally, if you are completely isolated, if for now you can't find even one other recuperating under-earner with whom to meet, then sit down once or twice a week for half an hour with this program and imagine that you and I are sitting there together, sharing our experience, our strength, and our hope with each other. If possible, share the fact of your recovery. By people who live alone. This part of the session provides techniques specifically addressing those. If you're not part of a couple or a family and would like to skip ahead, go ahead and do so, although I suggest you listen to this part of the session anyway. You might well find material here you can put to good use in your own life. There are 3 basic configurations possible for those who live with others: couple, family, and single-parent family. The most important point to make about any of them is that within it, the basic mechanisms of liberation remain the same as they are for people who live alone. You can't free yourself from under-earning by incurring new debt to get dental braces for your daughter any more than someone who is single can by incurring it to fly off to the islands on a holiday. Certainly the process can be more challenging when you are part of a couple or a family, and painful in ways not experienced by those who live alone, but not extraordinarily more challenging nor extraordinarily more painful. Further, differences in temperament, experience, and other areas will make this distinction largely meaningless in many cases. No matter who you are or what your living conditions, this is precisely how difficult your own situation is. More than some, less than others. You are taller than some people, shorter than others. Freeing yourself from under-earning will be harder for you than for some people, easier for you than for others. That's the way it will always be, for you, for me, and everyone else. Qualitatively, our experiences will be about the same. But what about differences between the sexes? Don't they affect the process? What differences exist, biological, cultural, historical, perhaps even emotional and psychological, will affect the manner and style in which one frees oneself from under-earning, but less so than one's personality and character. The concepts and techniques of liberation are for human beings, not sexes. Under-earning is no more gender-specific than alcoholism is, nor is liberation from it. First, in a family or couple situation, realize that you can't recover for anyone else, only for yourself. We'll discuss what to do if your partner is an under-earner a little later in this session. For now, just leave him alone, take care of yourself, and maybe he'll come around when he sees what you're accomplishing. Every household in which an under-earner is recovering needs a household spending plan. An old wedding song goes, "And now we two are one." It's very nice, very romantic, very loving, spiritual, only it doesn't work. Not when money is involved and one or both partners are under-earners. In fact, trying to pool your money into a communal pot in such a situation will probably be a catastrophe. It'll breed anger, fear, jealousy, blame, resentment, and those just for openers. The song to sing, paraphrasing Fats Domino, is "Just honey and me, and the household makes three." Because there are my expenses, your expenses, and the house's expenses. The house's, or household expenses, are those we have in common, which are necessary to us as a couple, and which benefit us both. Rent or mortgage payment, the money we spend on food, on electricity, car payments, and the like. What is needed in any couple are 3 spending plans. One for you, one for me, and one for the house. A household spending plan and record is very similar to an individual spending plan and record, only it has to do with the expenses that are in common for both partners. Only it has to do with such things as rent and food, shared by both partners, the household expenses. The household spending plan is very similar to the personal spending plan we talked about in Session 2, and there's an example of this in your workbook. Now I want to talk to you about the Rule of 3. The Rule of 3 says that both partners will probably be happier, and that there will be more peace in the relationship, and that liberation will be facilitated when there are 3 separate checking accounts and 3 separate savings accounts. When each partner has his own and her own personal checking account and savings account, and when the house has its own 2 accounts. These latter 2, the household accounts, are held jointly by both partners, and all the shared expenses are paid directly out of them. This arrangement makes perfectly clear what is the household's money and what is not. It provides both partners with a sense of privacy and independence and helps an under-earner gain a more accurate vision of his or her real circumstances. After you've established a household spending plan, schedule a series of what I call summit meetings together. A summit meeting is a semi-formal conference in which you sit down together to discuss everything that is pertinent to the household's finances and to make any decisions required. After you've taken care of the household's needs, each of you should be free to discuss anything with your partner about your own finances that you'd like to, or about which you would like some feedback. It's best to hold a summit meeting once a week for the first few months. Saturday or Sunday after breakfast is often a good time. Later, if you're comfortable with the change, you can meet on whatever schedule keeps things running smoothly. Many couples make twice-monthly meetings a regular part of their life. They are an effective way to communicate on an ongoing basis about shared expenses and any questions or problems that might arise. Sooner or later, something will come up between you and your partner about money that is particularly difficult, too charged to try to resolve in a regular summit meeting or through any other means that you know. Here is where something I call the wet tub discussion comes in extremely handy. It is an excellent way to disarm the situation. It allows you to talk the problem over with minimal rancor and helps you to find a happy and workable solution. Here's how to do it. First, fill a bathtub 2/3 of the way up with warm water. Second, take off your clothes, each of you. Third, get into the tub, facing each other. Fourth, smile at each other for 10 seconds. Fifth, begin your discussion. It's very difficult to become angry with someone when you're sitting naked in a tub of warm water with him or her. Many people laugh self-consciously at this suggestion at first, but nearly everyone who tries it finds that it helps her to say what she wants to in a way that is neither threatening nor accusatory. In employing what I call the Swiss Family Robinson technique, you enlist your entire family into the cause of liberation and make the process as best you can into an adventure. I know, under-earning is always singular, but in some cases, to a limited extent, the family can be looked upon as an under-earning unit, especially when both parents are under-earners, or in single-parent families, which means that in some ways it can work as a unit toward recuperation. Be honest with your children. Explain to them, according to the levels of their comprehension, what the situation is and what you're setting out to accomplish. Phrase this positively. Be careful you don't say anything that will alarm or frighten them, especially if they're very young. And indeed, there is nothing alarming or frightening. You're getting free of under-earning now. It's not necessary to go into detail or to talk about under-earning or liberation from it. Just give them the essence. Here's where we are, here's what we want to do, and here are some of the ways we're going to do it. If you'd like, include them in your summit meetings, or some of those meetings. Whatever you do, be sure to give them a sense of real participation, of helping to plan, being able to volunteer ideas, of having a vote, monitoring progress with you, and participating in resolving any questions that come up. David and Carol's children were 12, 9, and 7 when the family began to practice this technique. Infused with a feeling of adventure, the family divided up household tasks, created a system through which to recognize and honor each other's accomplishments, met at a family summit meeting twice each month, with David and Carol meeting alone on alternate weeks, and made as many decisions as possible by vote. Here's what David wrote to me later on. Carol and I felt we didn't have to lie or hide anything from the children. They understood and accepted things I never would have expected them to, since they had a say and knew some of the whys and saw all of us as a team. They didn't object much to missing out on some of the stuff their friends had or did or pitching in to help. Sometimes they were outright enthusiastic. When you have older children in their late teens, candor is probably the only element of this technique that is helpful. How much detail you wish to go into with them will depend on you, them, and your relationship with them. But at the very least, some kind of open discussion of family finances with them, of what's possible, what isn't, and why, will be helpful. In the early days of my own recovery from debt, my discretionary money was very limited. In that time, I had my youngest son with me every other weekend. I talked with him honestly about my finances, the fact that I was getting myself out of debt, and shared with him some of the steps I was taking to accomplish that. He understood. He joined with me in shopping and cooking, hunting through the newspapers for places to go and activities to do we would both enjoy and that didn't cost much. We had very good times together, and we were close. Could we have had equally good times and been equally as close if I had been able to take us to Belize for a week of scuba diving, or out to dinner frequently, or to the theater? I like to think so. But I know we had good times then, and that we were close. And I cherish those times in memory, particularly now that he, my youngest son, is grown up and living 3,000 miles away in California. I wouldn't at all mind living one of those weekends again, when we went to the farmer's market at Union Square on Saturday morning and cooked a pot of need, for the most part, to pay off its complete balance each month. If you're not doing that, you should put the credit card away and not use it until such time that you can. Otherwise, the credit card is just another enabler that allows or encourages you to keep under-earning. The only exception to this is when you're establishing a good credit record towards something like buying a house. In that case, what's important is something known as your FICO score, which has to do with how creditworthy you are, how reliably you pay your bills. And if you're late with any of your payments at all on that card, you're simply damaging your FICO score anyway. Let's turn now to savings. Savings are a fundamental part of overcoming under-earning. They protect you against contingencies. They're what you use as a down payment for a house, to buy a car with. They're where you get your money to start making your investments. All of these, for most people, are part of living the abundant life. Yet, most people in the United States don't save any money at all, or else very little. Yet it's much easier to create savings than people think. Actually, it's not difficult at all once you know how. Here's how to go about it. First, you need to reconceive of savings. Saving is spending. It's not money you're putting away or being prevented from spending or that's being removed from you. Saving is spending. It is spending on investments. It is buying an investment. Even if all you do with that money is put it into a passbook savings account, you are still spending it. You are spending it on yourself. But if that's true, what are you buying with it? Profit, the interest the bank will pay you. Buying profit is one of the best kept secrets about savings there is. The more profit you buy, the more profit you can buy. And of all the things money can be spent on, profit is one of the most helpful in gaining a happier and more prosperous relationship with money. Money you save is not money you're being deprived of. It is spending on yourself. Saving is putting money to work for you. Only fair since you spend a lot of time working for it. Each of your saved dollars is like an employee, only you don't pay your employees. They pay you. They go out into the marketplace to find work, and when they do, each sends his salary back to you, happily. You can have hundreds, thousands of employees out there working for you, perhaps even hundreds of thousands in this new life with money you're beginning to lead. Now, I don't want to go too much into figures here, but I'm going to mention a few of them just to show you what savings can accomplish. Consider, if you spend $1,000 on savings this year, you'll be sending 1,000 employees out to work for you. If each makes a salary of 10%, which isn't unreasonable to expect in the long run, those 1,000 employees will turn $100 over to you every year. And if you allow those $100, which you didn't have to do anything to get, to remain with your employees, to become new employees, you'll now have 1,100 employees working for you. Next year, those 1,100 employees will send back to you $110. Even if you were to do nothing but let your employees be, never spend another dime on them, simply allow the salary they earn to become new employees, at the end of 5 years, you would have 1,610 of them. At the end of 10 years, 2,594 of them. And all you did to get that $2,594 was to spend $1,000 on yourself, on savings, on buying an investment. Here's an even more interesting possibility. Let's say you spend $1,000 a year on savings for 5 years, buying yourself 1,000 employees each year to go out and work for you. At the end of 5 years, having spent $5,000, you'll have 6,252 employees working for you. If you spend $1,000 a year for $10, you'll have 16,173 employees. If you do that for 20 years, you'll have 57,887 employees. And if at the end of 20 years you never wanted to spend another dollar on another employee, the 57,887 of them you already have would continue to send their salary of nearly $6,000 a year to you every year for the rest of your life. And you would still have the original $57,887. These are the best kind of employees in the world, every one of them devoted to working entirely on your behalf. When is a good time to create savings? Somewhere between the time I finish this sentence and before I begin the next one. I mean it. Take $1 out of your wallet or 50 cents out of your pocket or your purse and set it aside. That's your first employee if you don't already have any. If you do already have some, but their number keeps rising and falling, and you never seem able to get it above a certain amount, then this is the time, right now, to begin increasing their number on a regular basis. In fact, you've already begun. You did so the moment you began to listen to this program. The best time to begin creating savings or increasing them is always now, right now. The most important thing is to begin, no matter how simply or on how small a scale. Now is how soon to start. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about investments. Investing has nothing to do with get-rich-quick schemes or making a killing in the market. Investing is simply putting money to work for you rather than you working for it, putting money to work for you safely and in ways that bring you a return that is at least greater than the rate of inflation. There are two simple ways to begin this. The first is to put your savings either into a money market fund or an online savings account. There are a number of these that are perfectly safe, that are insured by the federal government, and there's no risk of loss of your money. The second, and perhaps most effective, is to join the 401k plan that your company offers if your company offers such a plan. Most companies who do offer such plans are willing to match your contributions either 50 cents on the dollar, 25 cents on the dollar, or sometimes even dollar for dollar. This is a tremendous way to maximize the impact of your own personal savings. If your company does not have a 401k plan, you might want to look into either an IRA, an individual retirement account, traditional individual retirement account, or a KEO plan. For these, you really do need to speak with an accountant because there are some complications involved. They are pretty straightforward, they're very safe, and they're ways that allow your money to grow, in many cases, tax-free. But the laws change with some regularity, so you simply do want to be familiar with what is currently available, which does mean that you do need to speak with an accountant. Now, most investments eventually you'll want to put into the stock market. That may be a very scary thing for some of you to hear. It certainly was for me the first time I thought about it. Yet, since 1925, the stock market has returned an average annual profit of 11%. Year in, year out, through wars, recessions, depressions, civil unrest when cities were burning, and other upheavals. Year in, year out, as an average, since 1925, the stock market has returned 11%. That means for every $100 that you had into the stock market, if you just let it sit there in what's known as an index fund, which I'm going to speak about in a minute, means that year in, year out, for each $100 you had in there, you'd be making $11 worth of profit. It also means that about every 6.5 years or so, your money would double, just sitting there doing nothing else but being in the stock market. There is no better place for your long-term savings, your investments, than the stock market, and this despite the setbacks the market has suffered at different times. Stocks remain the single best investment most people can make. What happens in any year or set of years doesn't matter. Over the long haul, the market has returned an annual profit of 11%, and it is likely to continue doing so. Although in any given year there may be a great decline or an even larger run-up, over the long run the average will be 11%. The sooner you begin to invest in no matter how small an amount, the more powerfully the market and the miracle of compounding will work for you. If you invest $100 a month for 40 years, starting at age 25, having put a total of only $48,000 into that investment, you will have $868,000. But if you start only 3 years earlier at age 22 and put in only another $3,500 for a total of $51,000 invested, you will have $1,210,000. That is what the stock market can do for you over the years, fueled by the power of compounding. Now, I'm not going to go into an explanation of what compounding is. Very simply and basically, you get interest paid to you on the interest you've already received. That's what compounding is, and Albert Einstein called compounding the eighth wonder of the world. That's how powerful it is. Remember, we're talking about safe investments, good, sound, conservative stuff. Now, I'm going to make a suggestion here. That if you never do anything else in the stock market, if you never buy a single equity, you never buy stock options, you never buy on margin, you don't get into subordinated debentures, that you don't engage in the market in any of its complicated ways, that what you do is put your money into what's known as an index fund. Index funds are offered by mutual fund companies like Vanguard and Fidelity and Dreyfus and many of the others. An index fund basically buys stocks that are representative of the market as a whole. What happens with an index fund is when the market goes up, the index fund follows suit. Usually it's only 0.5 percentage point or so off from what the market is doing. When the market goes down, the index fund goes down. All it does is follow what the market does. And as we have said, the market over the long haul has returned an average of 11% a year. So that basically is what an index fund is very likely to do for the rest of your life that you have money in it. Now, I'm not guaranteeing that you're going to make 11%. You may make more, you may make less. You don't need to know a single thing about the market or even to pay any attention to it in order to invest in an index fund. The point of an index fund is that it just sits there reflecting whatever the market is doing. In fact, owning one is so easy that many people never invest in anything else. They just make regular contributions to their index fund and simply forget about it. They never worry about swings of the market. They sleep soundly at night. They just let their money grow with the economy. If you never do anything with your investment money but put it into an index fund, you'll still come out far ahead of people who never invest. What's more, you'll come out ahead of most aggressive investors, most speculative investors, most day traders, and most market timers. Here's a startling fact that I'd like to leave you with regarding the market. 75% of all fund managers, these are professional people who aggressively manage specialized mutual funds, not index funds, but very specialized funds that buy different kinds of equities that are available. 75% of all fund managers, professionals who manage everything from growth and income funds to real estate and forward equities funds, actually lose money in comparison to the market. They don't even match the annual growth of the Standard & Poor's 500 or the Dow Jones Index. They don't match what an index fund will accomplish for you. 75% of all professional money managers underperform the market. So if you just stay in the market, you're going to do very well. Now, how long do you hold your investments? Ideally, forever. Don't even think about trading in and out and highs and lows in markets. You're just going to lose money. There's an old joke among professional stockbrokers that says, you want to know how to make a small fortune in the market? Start with a large one. Here are two very simple ways to save. The first I call the $100 method. Let's say I gave you $100 to spend this weekend. If we were to reduce that amount to $95, would you be seriously restricted? Not really. Most people would scarcely notice the $5 reduction at all. They would have just as much fun and do just as well on $95 as they would have on $100. The missing $5 would be hardly more than the tip of the hat. This is an easy way to create savings, and one you'll barely notice. From every $100 you receive, remove $5 and put it in your savings account. The second is thanks for a job well done. And in practicing this, you pay yourself. Pay yourself $1 or more each day for a task such as making your bed. Pay yourself $5 a week and take the weekend off. I mean, you can still make your bed on the weekend if you'd like, but you're on holiday and you're not getting paid for it. Every month at the end of each week, put your first 3 weeks' pay into your savings account. On the 4th week, put it into your wallet and spend it over the weekend on something frivolous. Be sure to spend the money that weekend and on something strictly for fun, not on anything sensible or utilitarian. This allows you both to reap the benefits of paying yourself for the task that you're doing, to have some fun from it, and also to build your savings. Follow this system every month. 3 weeks pay into savings, 1 week's pay out on the town. Here is a technique that is very powerful and that many people have used to tremendously good effect. It's something I call the 25% solution. It works for you in several ways. Here's how you go about it. Select 4 hours a month. This might be a Saturday morning. It might be 2 hours on one Saturday, 2 hours on a Saturday 2 weeks later. Identify a skill or a talent that you have. Market that skill or talent for those 4 hours a month. Just 4 hours a month. It's not a lot of time. And for those 4 hours, charge 25% more than you usually make. In other words, if the money you make breaks down to $20 an hour, you're going to sell these 4 hours for $25 an hour. If you are normally paid $40 an hour, you're going to market these 4 hours for $50 an hour. If you normally get $60 an hour, you market these 4 hours for $75 an hour. And if you make $100 an hour, you market these 4 hours for $125. What this does is to bring in real money into your life on a monthly basis that you didn't have before for only a small investment of time, and it also, more profoundly, shows you that you can make more per hour than you ever thought you could before. To bring this session to a close, I want to go back to families and this time address the single-parent family. The bulk of single-parent families are still headed by women, although the number of men who head such families is increasing. These techniques, like all the others, remain the same regardless of your sex. There's a wonderful technique that I call co-oping. In co-oping, you create a network with other heads of single-parent families. You trade what you have that others in the network might want for what they have that you need. Clothes, furniture, and similar items that are in good condition can be passed from a household whose children have outgrown them to another whose children are just growing into them. Prices on everything from clothes to appliances and automobiles can sometimes be reduced by offering to make bulk or multiple purchases. 3 single mothers in Delray Beach, Florida, for example, who needed to replace their family automobiles, went separately to the used car division of a dealer they had agreed upon earlier. Each one picked the car she wanted, negotiated the best price she could, but then declined to buy and said she wanted to think about it. Then they returned to the dealer together, and in exchange for offering to buy all 3 cars that afternoon, were able to get an additional 6% discount on each car. Often child watching hours can be arranged as a swap to be repaid in kind. Out of the camaraderie that can grow in a single-parent network, people sometimes exchange professional worker services too. Carpentry, dentistry, bookkeeping, nearly anything that one member specializes in that another needs. Teaming up to rent an apartment or a house and forming a kind of extended family is another form of co-oping. Jane, who had a 3-year-old son, moved in with Sasha, who had 2 daughters, 14 and 11, into a small house. They lived there for nearly 2 years at a household cost significantly lower than what either would have had to have paid alone, and each had someone with whom to share the adult tasks and to create a larger sense of family and support. Where can you find other single parents with whom to form a network? Through your church or your synagogue, community centers, community associations and organizations, through men's groups or women's groups, by meeting them at playgrounds or children's events, through community papers, newsletters, and building bulletin boards, in a self-help program, through school guidance counselors, through your pediatrician, and through friends. If you're a single parent with children, I want you to know and really accept the fact that you are entitled to use every resource available to you and to receive every benefit for which you're qualified. Now, no one likes to feel weak or dependent. Even under-earners still in the grips of their affliction are unhappy and uncomfortable with having others provide for them what they need. Getting free of under-earning, many people find it difficult to ask for help or to accept it, thinking they ought to be able to do everything for themselves immediately, or because they fear it would mean slipping back, or because they want the help, which makes them feel guilty. Here is something you need always to keep in mind. If it's not under-earning, then whatever else it may be, it's not under-earning. If an event or incident does not mean incurring new debt, or taking work that pays you less than you need, or saying no to money, then at a threshold level, it is not under-earning. And if, further, it is something that will also help you to get free of under-earning or make that process easier, then it is desirable to do. And since it is in the service of your liberation, it should therefore be a source of self-esteem rather than embarrassment or shame. It took courage and commitment to do it. The range of resources available can be great, depending upon your situation. Some people are qualified for government assistance, such as unemployment benefits, Medicaid, food stamps, housing supplements, aid to dependent children, Social Security payments, and the like. Many corporations have employee assistance programs. There are private agencies such as volunteer lawyers for the arts. Unions sometimes help with goods, with money, and scholarships. Community centers may provide counseling services or a place where children can stay after school. The Legal Aid Society often represents tenants under threats of eviction. Sharon, a graphic designer with 2 children, exhausted what little savings she had during a bitterly contested divorce. Her estranged husband, a punitive man, obsessive, sued for custody of their children. Sharon went more than $30,000 into debt to her lawyer. As the first major step in freeing herself from under-earning, she resolved not to incur any new debt, no matter what she had to do. Briefly, she represented herself in court, but she was frightened by that and didn't do well. Through a friend, she made contact with a shelter for battered women. Though emotionally abused during her marriage, Sharon had never been physically abused. Ordinarily, the shelter did not help in such cases, but because of Sharon's persistent entreaties, it finally did refer her to a lawyer. He examined her situation and agreed to represent her pro bono. Thus, Sharon was able to get what she needed for herself and her children without incurring any new debt, which was a crucial step in her liberation. Since then, she has been able to raise her income steadily and has even begun to repay her previous debts. Seeking to learn what help is available, then asking for it, and in some cases becoming willing to accept it, is not easy. But it is self-care. It is a step forward, and you are entitled to it. By availing yourself of it, you assist and strengthen your liberation. You will give back much more than you receive. You will give it back through your own recovery. You will give it back to everyone with whom you come into contact. Your recovery will become part of all that is positive in the world. Now let's talk about something that is occasionally a difficult subject for some people, and that is what's right is right. If your spouse ran out on you and stuck you with bills, if he or she looted your joint bank accounts or ran your credit card and store accounts up to the maximum and left you to pay for everything, or dumped the children on you or won't help with their support, then it's time to get tough. I am in favor of, and to the best of my ability practice, looking upon all beings with eyes of compassion. Nevertheless, and not contradictorily, I am also in favor of requesting and forcing, if necessary, and when possible, all beings to honor their financial responsibilities to their former spouses and the children they sired or bore. This kind of assistance is owed to you. It's especially important for you to seek it when you are an under-earner, and therefore have a powerful impulse to say no to money. You are entitled to help from your former partner. You are entitled to it in an amount that fairly represents your situation and his or hers. It's not always possible to locate a former spouse, but if you know where yours is, and he or she refuses to take responsibility, the courts may well help you. They are becoming increasingly firm in requiring non-custodial parents to pay their fair share of the costs of raising their children. Recently, the federal government has given some indication that it may become involved in forcing such parents to meet their responsibilities too. There are no guarantees here. You might not be able to find your former spouse. The court may be unwilling or unable to compel him or her to pay for expenses charged to joint accounts or to make an equitable contribution towards supporting your children. Also, you need to weigh your legal costs against the possible benefits you might gain. Sometimes the equation just isn't in your favor. But whatever the ultimate results, take what sensible actions you can. What's right is right, and you are not unfair in asking for that principle to be upheld. In the end, freedom from under-earning is not for people who need it. It's for people who want it. If you're married to or live with someone who is also an under-earner but who won't admit that, or who refuses to take steps toward recovery, or even to cooperate with you in your own recovery, to the simple extent, say, of drawing up a household spending plan with you, then you're in a difficult situation. The best tack is optimism. Just go about your own liberation and assume that in time there will be a resolution that serves your best interests, individually and together. Assume that your own life will grow ever calmer, deeper, and richer because of this, and that sooner or later, as that happens, your partner can't help but notice and eventually to want a similar experience for himself or herself. Don't argue, plead, or cajole. Don't try to proselytize. None of that will work. Simply live your own recovery for your own sake, in the knowledge that it is the best and most loving thing you can do for your partner. Sometimes this tack works, sometimes it doesn't. But regardless of what happens with your partner, this is the best thing you can do for yourself. For a while, anyway. Eventually, there will come a time when it is no longer reasonable to assume that continuing in this fashion will result in a positive resolution. That time could be a year, it could be 2 years, or 3, or it could be a few months. Only you can determine. But when it does arrive, if it does, you have a hard decision to make. If your partner will have nothing to do with getting free of under-earning, you have 3 choices. First, stay with him, with the knowledge that he will probably never change. Stay with the understanding that you are choosing this situation, that you recognize, comprehend, and accept it for what it is, that you voluntarily elect to remain in it. In this case, you will probably perceive more that is good in the circumstances than bad. You'll deem it livable as it is, and believe that you can undertake your own liberation in its context without impossible difficulty. Second, try to persuade your partner to change. You might negotiate, for example, trading in activities she would like to do or would like you to cease doing in exchange for her sitting down with you and drawing up a household spending plan together. You could ask her to listen to this program, or to go into counseling with you, or to a support group, even if only to listen and observe. Perhaps she might be willing to talk to a cleric or a friend about the problem. You might write her a long letter expressing your love and explaining why you think such a change would be good for her and for you as a couple. This kind of approach is potentially explosive. So whatever you do, do it lovingly and as free of judgment or criticism as you can. Otherwise, your partner will probably only become angry and resist even more strenuously. If you exhaust every option you can think of here and there is no change, you can either accept the situation as described earlier, or decide to give it more time, or deliver an ultimatum, a warning that you find the situation intolerable and that unless your partner takes at least some steps toward trying to improve it, you are going to leave or do whatever is necessary to see that she leaves. 3. Leave, or see that your partner does. This is an extremely serious step. I am not suggesting that you take it. I present it here only as one of the 3 choices available to you. If you do consider leaving or causing your partner to leave, then do so carefully. Be aware of all the consequences and ramifications of such an act. Write them down so you can see them clearly. Talk to your cleric, therapist, or someone else you trust to be objective and who has your best interests at heart. Even in the few situations I've known where it was clearly in the best interest of the recovering under-earner to end the relationship, and indeed later proved to have been so, sometimes dramatically, it still and inescapably involved a great deal of pain and upheaval. Hardball is necessary, but optimism about it is always best. It will make things easier for you and for everyone else as well. Further, the very act of expecting a positive outcome will make such an outcome more likely. Finally, and to end this session, live and let live. Live your own life as you choose and let your partner, your grown children, and everyone else you know live their lives as they choose, or for reasons beyond our ken, perhaps as they must. Attend to the beam in your own eye. The motes in theirs are their business. It is your birthright to live as you wish. It is theirs to do the same. Your liberation depends only on you. Theirs, if they are under-earners, depends only on them. It is possible that we do know sometimes